We're thrilled to be joined on the Unleashed podcast by Allison Jacobs and Kristen Perrus of Scouts Honor in Bloomington, Indiana. A wonderful facility. If you haven't checked it out, just go to their website, which of course is Scouts Honor. Scouts Honor, Scouts Honor. No, it's more than ScoutsHonor.com, isn't it? It's what is the website?
ScoutsHonor.com was a little too expensive. It's Scouts
Yeah.
Honor Pet. It's ScoutsHonorPetRetreat.com.
Sweet. Okay, so ScoutsHonorPetRetreat.com. I had a chance to go down and visit firsthand a little less than a year ago now, and was just blown away by what the two of you and Henry, Allison's husband, are doing at the retreat. Really fantastic stuff. And in fact, at Unleashed, we are going to be doing a lot of the same model of what Scouts Honor has been doing. So really thrilled to have you both on the podcast today. Thanks for joining me. I guess I'll throw it to both of you. Kristen is a trainer, and Allison, you're more of the business owner, manager, sort of all-encompassing person for Scouts Honor. But why don't we just start with how the idea came about? I know that for you, Allison, it was if I'm not mistaken, it was a bit of a career change from where you're, what you went to school for, but you got into working with dogs, connected with Kristen, and you built this great business. So why don't we just start from scratch? It wasn't all that long ago, and you've grown it into something already that's really spectacular in Bloomington.
Yeah, for sure. So Kristen and I met each other through dog training classes, and then we got to know each other through the nonprofit world. We ran a dog rescue together. We fostered and rehomed, trained several dogs, and we figured out that we worked together pretty well. Kristen was the manager at one of our now competitors, and she didn't have the influence to be able to make changes that she wanted to do to enrich the lives of dogs through animal care and wellness, and also make things better for the staff. And so that's what inspired Kristen to start Scouts Honor. And I had been running a dog daycare out of my home and wanted to expand. So we decided to do this venture together.
Yeah, what a journey it's been. And when was that started, Allison? Was that in 2020 or 2021, was it?
Kristen, we started working on this in 2020, right? In August.
Yeah, we thought it was a good idea to do that during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I feel, we purchased Unleashed in the Madison area here in 2019. And I've told the story before, but I told my oldest daughter, she said, "Is this going to work?" I said, "Hey, barring a worldwide catastrophe, we should be fine." And then 6 months later, we had COVID. So
we had a worldwide catastrophe.
Yeah. So, Kristen, tell me about just the idea and the model that you brought, because what you've done basically, and I think a lot of people have heard the buzz about enrichment daycare and or enrichment. It's a little nebulous. Nobody knows exactly what it means, but of course, Scouts Honor has a really specific model of how you do things. So obviously you played a key role in that. How'd you come to it? How'd you come to doing, the three basic: a structured daycare, hybrid, and solo daycare? And then of course you do training on top of that. And at Scouts Honor, there's a whole training department as well, which is a step above or beyond, I guess you would say, sort of the daycare model, or it can work in conjunction. But why don't you start there? How did you come up with this model?
Yeah, so back when we first opened, we only had two programs. When we first opened, we had the day camp program and we had the solo camp program. And when we kind of got into it, we realized that a lot of dogs didn't fit that model of just daycare. A lot of dogs didn't fit and wasn't being successful in an all-day camp. So we were trying to figure out a way how to cater to this majority of dogs that, didn't fit in solo. They still wanted to be socialized, but didn't fit in the day camp because they needed something more mentally stimulating. So we spent some time, and then we kind of realized, why don't we merge the two to create this enrichment model where we're able to not only give them those socialization benefits, but also be able to tap into those species specific needs that they all have. So that's kind of how that enrichment model kind of blew up, is because we kind of stopped looking at, one dog fits all, or all dog fits into this one box. And we realized that we need to work towards the dog's like natural instincts rather than what we think they should fit. And that's kind of how that began, was we did that. And that's also how we kind of modeled our training as well, is we have the half day in group play and then half day in training. So they're able to get both of those benefits as well. So they get the mental stimulation from doing enrichments or training, and then the physical stimulation from being in group play and getting that socialization benefits that a lot of dogs need.
And then Before we get into sort of the specifics of it, Allison, tell me what, 2020, you opened during COVID. We all kind of went through that. Now we're on the cusp as we talk here today of, 2024 and going into it. You've doubled the size of your facility. You're looking at building an entire new facility within a couple of years here or so. Clearly, you've experienced success with what you've been doing it's right downtown Bloomington, Indiana, just to kind of set the scene. But tell me how people have responded. What has it been like over the last 3 years here as the business has grown?
We have received a lot of positive feedback educating our staff on the benefits of enrichment. Our clients that are enrolled in hybrid camp see the benefits of the program in their dog's behavior at home, and they also see it on their report cards that they receive every day. Like we have Cora, the Aussie that just loves hybrid camp and fetch, and she thrives in daycare now just because she gets that mental or that mental that mental and physical stimulation before she goes into group play. And so she's already primed and perfected, ready to go to group play, and just has the best day ever. It's really fun to see. But
Yeah.
things have been going really, really well. We have twice the amount of staff that we ever thought that we were going to have. We took on way more space in our current facility than we ever thought we were going to have. And we are just very happy with how our progress has happened. But we wouldn't be here if we weren't focusing on animal wellness and animal enrichment. We put the dogs first always.
Yeah, it's a great model. And you've invented a new word. Mental and physical stimulation is now metical. So we'll go with that.
Yeah, we'll go with that. I'll update my website.
We're gonna market that. We've coined a new phrase here on the Unleashed podcast. I love it. Metical. Yeah. So let's dive into it a little bit. Let me ask you this too: the results that you talk about at home, and maybe Kristen, you can speak to this. When we say that, okay, so ultimately, I think a pet parent is looking for a great outlet for their fur ball, their pet, their dog, and they're looking for both, maybe the stimulation, but also a great time, and then they also want to see some results, right? If they're having some issues, maybe at home with, you name it, X, Y, or Z. Maybe their dog is crazy amount of energy, or they're not, handling certain items or situations well at home. Can you tell me, generally speaking, what kind of feedback you're getting from your customers who have dogs within the programs here, at Scouts Honor, and what they are seeing in terms of results at home?
Oh, I can jump in. So we've had clients say that they're seeing a decrease in especially jumping behaviors because they're not as wound up. We're seeing a decrease in inappropriate chewing of things at home, boredom, anxiety, stress, and frustration. Dogs that have normally, shown anxiety going home are showing less and less when being put into these enrichment programs, because it's finally being able to use their brain to something productive instead of just expecting them to be tired because we're just working their body, but we're working their mind as well, which is why we're seeing a decrease in anxiety, stress, and frustration at home.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's ideally exactly what you want. It's our mutual friend Fern Camacho, who's been on the podcast as well. It used a phrase that I love, and it's like, it's going to school rather than just going to a babysitter, right? It's more than just the physical stimulation. If you have just a standard daycare and your dogs are running around for 8 hours and doing nothing except just kind of, there, and they're in a group, and it's great, but there could be so much more, right? And so that model from going to just a standard daycare to doing events and activities and again enrichment activities beyond just that can really take it to a whole new level. And it really, Allison, I think is where the industry is probably headed, right? And we certainly want to be leaders in that area. Scouts Honor definitely already is, and at Unleashed, of course, we're looking to be leaders too. And clearly you've seen some great results from shifting the model.
Absolutely. All of this was inspired by Kristen and I's personal dogs who were starting to age out of traditional daycare. My dogs actually got kicked out of group play at their previous facility because they just didn't enjoy group play all day anymore, and they needed some type of mental stimulation to be able to be successful in group play. So all of it came down to focusing on what is best for the dogs, and that seems to be where the industry is going. We're no longer focusing on putting as many dogs in a room as possible with as few people as possible. We're focusing on engaging, interacting with the dogs, and ensuring that they have the most fulfilling day possible. So when they go home, they're not just exhausted, they're tired because they have been thinking and working all day, just like dogs should do.
Yeah, and growing that way. I hear some horror stories of daycares who have like 100 dogs in a space with three handlers or something. It's just, oh my God, I can't even imagine. So yeah, we don't do that kind of stuff. But
No, we don't. No, we don't.
yeah, not at all. Kristen, are there breeds or behaviors? Is it when you're kind of evaluating? Is it certain breeds that benefit the most from some of these enrichments? Is it more you focus on the behavior, or maybe it's an anxious dog or an overexcited dog that will benefit most, regardless of the breed?
Yeah, so we any dog can really benefit from enrichments, but we see working breeds and herding breeds tend to love it the most. I especially just got a border collie puppy, and he loves it. But any dog really can benefit. Older dogs really, especially with doing snuffle mats and sniff mats, can really help their mental cognitive skills for older dogs. And so any dog can really benefit from it, but the working and herding breeds especially love it. It definitely decreases unwanted behavior in group play because they're finally getting that outlet. But I've seen, labs really love the fetch, and you see like older dogs really love the ball pits because they get to get all those snacks. And so, the herding breeds and working breeds tend to love it the most. A lot of dogs see a lot of great benefits coming out of it as well.
Yeah, it's great. And of course, you got a border collie because you're a trainer. You have to have a border collie.
Every trainer has a border collie, and I finally jumped on that. And he is now 4 months old, and I don't get much sleep.
Yeah, you're getting your stimulation. Yeah, the border collie is your enrichment as a trainer. Yes, for sure. All right, let's talk about. I'm always curious when I see you. You have a lot of different enrichment activities at Scouts Honor, and I certainly looked at that when I was there, and Unleashed, we're going to offer pretty much all of the same enrichments that you're offering as well. So are there ones that are the most popular? What would you say are the most popular enrichments, or maybe they're all kind of equally popular, or what do you think?
I would think that, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say agility. Go for it, Kristen.
Yeah, agility. People love to see their dogs doing agility. I definitely see the slap mill is very popular. People love just being able, and especially since it's year-round enrichment, people love being able to see their dog get that kind of exercise. What else? Yeah, I would say, and then people love seeing their dogs. We do walks as well for enrichment, and people love seeing their dogs out on walks. It's just nice for the owner to see their dogs get out of Scouts Honor and be able to go experience different things, especially through walking and hiking.
Okay, get the sniffs in, and I know ball pit is in there as well. I would assume where you get some. It's usually a little bit of a shorter enrichment because there's only so long that you can keep a dog engaged. Maybe 10, 15 minutes is what I'm kind of assuming when you do the ball pit. And if you're unsure of what that is, it's where you have a pit of we use a kiddie pool, and we fill it with the balls, like the little plastic balls that you'd see in the ball pits. I don't know, when I was growing up in the 80s, they were awesome. I loved them. They were my own personal enrichment at like McDonald's or Hardee's or the roller rink. There were no treats in there though, so dogs have it better than I did. But anyway, you throw little bits and treats in there, and it really engages the dog's sense of kind of scavenging and looking and being rewarded, right? And so that can be a popular one as well.
Yeah, 20 minutes of just sniffing, so through ball pits, snuffle mats, and puzzles. 20 minutes of just doing that is equivalent to an hour-long walk. So it's huge for dogs, just being able to tap into that natural instinct of scavenging, foraging, and finding those treats.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great tidbit to kind of understand. Even if you're at home, sometimes you can set up some things for your dogs to sniff in the living room if you want to give them an activity. So it's pretty cool.
Like ways to make your own, snuffle mats at home. I've made ones with towels because my border collie, he figures out the snuffle mats that I have right now. He's figured them all out. So we've figured out how to make some through towels and stuff. So there's always benefits that you can see from home by just trying it out.
I love it. I have 2 Goldens, so my life is easy. You chose the border collie route. I love it. So let's Allison dive into the 3 basic ways in terms of your daycare at Scouts Honor. What we're going to be doing Unleashed as well. You have the structured daycare 2.0, basically, or the 2.0 program with structured daycare, hybrid daycare, and solo camp. You guys call them camps. I'm sorry. We're going to probably stick with daycare, but terminology, right? But let's talk about structured and the day. What does that look like? What does a typical day for a dog look like, Allison, with the structured daycare model?
I'm actually going to let Kristen answer this
Oh, okay.
question because
Why?
because Kristen is the one that really built this program.
Let's set it up. Okay.
When she was finishing her training certification, Kristen actually worked in the yards every single day for 6 months, teaching our staff the proper way to engage and enrich a pack of dogs. So I think she would be the better person to answer this question.
Okay, go ahead. Floor is yours, Kristen.
So kind of just starting from the very beginning when the dog arrives for the day. The dog arrives for the day, and then the camp counselors greet the dog, and then kind of gets adjusted into the play group. And after that, after all the dogs have arrived for the day, is when we start to mentally stimulate them while they're in group play. So you see some fun activities being done in this structured day camp. So you see it can be kind of varied there based on the dogs of the group, but typically we try to stick to a 1-to-1 ratio, 1-to-1 format. So 1 hour we work on just hanging out with the dogs, working on the report cards, that kind of thing, and the next hour working on mentally stimulating them. So that can include group sits, bubbles, that includes agility in the yards. We have little jumps for them, and it also includes just teaching them body awareness, not jumping on people. Gait work's really important because it teaches them that important impulse control. And then that's kind of how we spend the day. We spend a little bit of time just hanging out, giving them those rest periods and giving them times to, just be able to socialize with one another, but also not letting them get to the point of over socialization, of over arousal, because we're continuously mentally stimulating them throughout the day. So typically we would start with higher, more engaging enrichments in the yard in the beginning of the day. And then as the time goes on and we're reaching the end of the day, we kind of taper off to a little bit lower levels because they've had the whole day of having fun. And now it's time to give them that opportunity to rest both mentally and physically, so we don't see any dogs get upset with one another.
So as the morning progresses and you go into the afternoon, you're kind of doing the 1-to-1. Do you also give them any breaks, or how does the kind of the schedule for the day flow in that terms? And when I say breaks, I mean breaks where they actually come out of the pack and maybe take some time just in a suite, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on the dog's personality. Some dogs require more breaks, especially like I was saying before, herding breeds and working breeds tend to, get overstimulated very easily. So sometimes we'll give them breaks throughout the day. But if it's a dog that just kind of can self-regulate in group play, then they're able to do that in group play. But if a dog struggles with being able to regulate their sleep time and their play time and it's just constantly go, 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 we can send them in for a break in a cabin so they can take that moment and decompress and regulate their own behaviors.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then with the dogs that you have that are just in that program and don't do the other individual enrichments or maybe the hybrid or certainly not the solo because they're in group play, same kind of reports or feedback from pet parents. I would imagine if you're doing the physical, the socialization, and the mental stimulation, that's the equivalent of a hugely full day, and they're pretty tired and happy when they go home.
Oh, definitely. They're definitely tired. It's just, some dogs do fit into that, structured daycare and they can do that. But majority needs more mental stimulation and more one-on-one time. But we do see a lot of positive feedback and people being like, oh my God, my dog, slept for 2 days. And they've been like amazing. And I'm like, oh, that's so great. I'm glad that your dog got that enjoyment out of camp and got to experience a little bit of new things.
And again, you can check all this. Or go ahead, Allison. I'm sorry. Please jump in.
What Kristen said earlier is so important. A lot of people don't realize that mental stimulation is equivalent to physical stimulation. It makes dogs just as tired. If you study for an exam for 8 hours, you're going to be so tired after studying. And so what we're trying to do, especially right now, is educate our client base by telling them that mental stimulation is just as exhausting for a dog as physical stimulation, but it's exhausting in a more beneficial way.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And again, it does equate to humans. It's the same thing. If you've gone through a mentally taxing day, even if you've never left your desk, you're probably more tired than if you did physical labor all day, really. I mean, it depends on the amount of physical labor, I suppose, but you're very tired, and the same can be true for dogs. I mean, after all, we're all mammals here, right? Come on.
Absolutely.
You can take dogs out for 20 walks a day and they're still like, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
And then you do something that's more equivalent to their mental enrichment, and then suddenly they're asleep, and you're like, okay, that's the secret right there.
Yeah, secret sauce. For sure. Yep. So again, the website is scoutshonorpetretreat.com if you want to take a look at some of these things. One of the things that jumps out at when you go to the daycare session, or actually it's the headers camp, and you go to daycare, what I noticed right away is that the staff recommends hybrid. It's the staff preferred sort of day activity or day long plan for a dog. And that's where you get half day in the structured daycare setting and a half day with two mentally and maybe physically stimulating enrichment. So let's talk about that and why that is staff preferred and what benefits you've seen from the hybrid program.
We see that dogs are the best versions of themselves when they are in the hybrid program. They don't get overstimulated in group play, and they genuinely enjoy the one-on-one enrichments with the staff. They genuinely enjoy using their brain and using other parts of mammal instincts versus I'm just going to play and jump on my friends all day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Chance to mix it up, in other words, and a chance to have, again, the best of both worlds, if you will, right?
Yes, it curbs behaviors at home, like what Kristen was talking about, just because it exhausts other parts of the mind. Dogs are less destructive at home. They're less barky at home. They're less, I'm going to jump on my human and knock them over just because they've had that outlet to get out at camp.
And then let's dive into the solo aspect of it. Let's start with this because it's generally dogs. You tell me, but is it just generally dogs that, at least at the start, just do not do well, whether it be because they're overly aggressive or don't read the signals from other dogs very well in group, or maybe they're just too anxious or too scared when they get into group, maybe all the above. But how does a dog end up in the solo camp program at Scouts Honor?
They can end up in the solo camp program different ways. Like what you said, it could be I'm too anxious for group play. And we have seen dogs that have started in solo camp and progressed to hybrid camp and then progressed to day camp, just as they get used to the staff and used to the flow of how things are going at Scouts Honor. Solo camp has also been great for dogs that are entering sexual maturity and aren't ready to get neutered yet. Sometimes those male dogs especially will start resource guarding females in the yard, and we don't want to kick them out of Scouts On. We love them. And so we put them in solo camp until they can get neutered, and then they re-enter hybrid camp or day camp after they get neutered. It's also for dogs that just don't enjoy the company of other dogs, like my dogs. They don't, and that's totally okay. Not all dogs want to be around that many dogs all day, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. And we also use it, some clients that will bring their dog several days a week will book a solo camp day just to switch it up. And so they're not doing the same thing every single day.
Yeah, very cool. And, it's, again, equate back to humans. We all know that there are humans that don't want to be around a big group of people, or maybe on certain days, you just don't want to be around a bunch of people. I experienced that myself, especially as I get older. It's like I used to want to be around a lot of people, and now I'm like, I'm just going to stay in tonight. So I think the same thing can be true for dogs. And it's a great point about, not being neutered, or we'll even add spayed, I think, in certain circumstances to that as well. For instance, at Unleashed, we have a 8-month cutoff where you have to be either spayed or neutered by 8 months, or else we can't have group play. And before we've launched this program, we don't have an answer for those pet parents, and it stinks because maybe their dog has been coming since age 4 or 5 months, and all of a sudden their vet and them have decided, well, we don't want to have our dog altered until a year, maybe 15 months, something like that, and then we feel terrible because it's like, wow, we can't, we have to protect the pack. And so we have to have this rule. And so, again, solo camp gives you an option. The other thing with solo camp, too, is that, and you tell me if you do this at Scouts Honor, but I think there's the opportunity maybe to have very small group play. If the goal is to maybe help your dog get into more group and socialized settings, that, hey, one of the enrichments can be just a very small, well-supervised pack of 2 to 4 dogs that your solo enrichment camper can be part of, and that can help grow them to a point where maybe they can get into a hybrid or a full camp program.
We do that. We do socials. Typically, we do with neutral dogs that we know really well. So typically, employee dogs are definitely great dogs to enjoy socials with. Yeah,
so it can be a great program that way.
They do help dogs get into hybrid camp or day camp, but sometimes especially with my dogs, they don't like to be in our pack sizes. Our pack sizes are at most 15 dogs to one human, and that can be a lot of dogs to some dogs. And so some dogs
Sure.
only prefer to play with 1 to 3 other dogs at a time, and that solo camp allows them to do that. So social sessions are very popular enrichments for most of our solo camp dogs.
Yeah, no, very cool. And how many would you say on average do you have in terms of the solo, the solo campers? Is there like a daily average that you have in terms of numbers?
I'd say about 20% each day is in solo camp.
So, yeah. So a decent portion of the entire population, which is good because again, it's a great option for people who are wanting their dog to be engaged during the day, maybe while they're at work, but they don't have a lot of options, and so it can be a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was inspired by my dog, June, who is a great dog, but she just doesn't really like being around other dogs. And we wanted to create an environment for dogs like June to be able to go and enjoy a day at daycare, but not have to be around other dogs. There are a lot of dogs like that.
Yeah, no, a bunch. And I know, again, we're very excited to be able to provide an option for dogs like that at Unleashed. Absolutely. Can't wait. I'm very excited to get that up and running.
It'll be an awesome program for you.
Yeah. So, obviously, Kristen, a huge part of what you do at Scouts Honor, and a lot of what you do personally, Kristen, is to oversee the training program. And so, you are there dogs that either can't fit into any of the enrichment programs nicely, or maybe like you were saying, you combine a little bit of both, where they do maybe half the day in the hybrid program, and then they come over and they actually do more intensive training and working on whatever it might be, particular skills or things that both you and the pet parents agree that you want to work on in terms of training, because you certainly offer that as well as a huge part of what's going on at Scouts Honor.
Yeah, so our training model is kind of similar to the solo and hybrid camp model. So like I was saying before, if you're a typical hybrid camper, you would spend half the day in group play, and then you'd come over to work on specific behaviors for that you want to work on, or that we had, like you said, previously discussed, or we follow just what the basic obedience cues. So that's the 5 most basic commands, which is sit down, place, come, and heel. And then if your dog is a solo camper, they'll do their enrichments, and then they'll come over and do training to work on specific behaviors. So they're still getting both of those like super great benefits from training and from just being out on the campsite. They get to also be handled by multiple people, which is great for dogs that are a little bit more nervous or anxious, or even can be a little bit ruder to people. It's really great for them to get exposed to a lot of different people.
So are you working more on some basic obedience training, maybe confidence building type of training activities as well? In other words, and when you do that, are you doing one dog at a time, or are you doing maybe small groups, or how does that work?
Yeah, so on the training side, we do one dog at a time. So they get their training sessions for the day. It's about 30 minutes. And that's when I spend time either working on the most important behaviors that are to the owner and to just everybody. So I've had dogs that come in that really struggle at confidence building. So we'll spend the entire session working on, tackling some agility equipment, or tackling some, wobble boards, just really boosting that confidence. And then there's some dogs who come in who need to work on just being appropriate in public. So I can, pop them in my car, and then we go to Lowe's and work on just, proper greetings around people. So it really depends on the dogs, but we cater each session to what the goals are for the owner and just overall their goals.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like just a great opportunity, great program to accomplish some of those things. And there's such a huge need for a lot of those basic skills of a dog. When you're on a walk and you pass a dog who starts to go crazy every time they see another human or a dog on the street, and owners just don't know what to do a lot of times. And so help in that area, I think, can be really big. And there's definitely a huge need for it, because there's a lot of, more and more, right? More and more dogs all the time. People more and more, COVID, beyond COVID, whatever the case may be, getting dogs, and some of them not knowing what to do, right? And so that's where
it can be very scary for an owner to be faced with these problem behaviors, and they're like, I didn't study for this. I thought my puppy was going to be like this great, well-rounded adult, and now I'm starting to see all these behavioral issues, and that's when the anxiety starts to happen. And it definitely helps with people wanting to rehome their dog, or just be like, I'm done. So being able to have that knowledge and how to take care of these behaviors have definitely, they empower the owner, because at the end of the day, I'm not training the dogs, I'm helping the owners create this relationship with their dog and be able to communicate effectively.
That's great. Any plans? Either of you can take this one as we wrap up here. Any new initiatives or plans in 2024 and beyond just the facility stuff where you're going to be hopefully expanding into a whole new building, but any other with the programs or plans that you have for Scouts Honor here going forward in the short to midterm?
Our most requested program is an all-day long training program. So we're going to roll that out next year, and dogs will have the option to train all day, and it will be a mixture of training and enrichment, but it won't include group play. And then another big focus of ours in 2024 is educating our client base that hybrid camp isn't a punishment. Hybrid camp is better for most dogs because most dogs need mental stimulation just like humans.
1% of dogs are successful in daycare. I always say that it's like,
really,
put me in a room with 30 of my closest friends, about 2 hours, I'm ready to go home. I don't want to talk to them anymore. So if we can't expect ourselves to sit in a room with all our closest friends for 8+ hours a day, why are we expecting our dog to do the same thing?
That's a great 1%. Is that right?
What do you think, Allison? 1%?
1 to 5%. Sure.
1 to 5. We'll go
yeah. Yeah. It's not a really big amount. Most dogs just don't enjoy being in group play for 12 hours a day, and that's totally okay. That's totally okay. And people just don't really realize that is not what their dog wants to do. Dogs deserve to have a mentally enriching day as well as the physical activity of socialization. We do think socialization is really important. That's why we include it in our solo camp programs and our hybrid program. But we believe that mental stimulation is just as important and just as really physically taxing as physical stimulation. It makes dogs, it promotes better behaviors in dogs.
Yeah, I think that's true. I've heard the statistic that 5% of dogs are leaders and sort of the, I guess I don't know if alpha is the right word, but the leaders of the pack, and 95% are more of the followers. So that would line up kind of with what you're talking about. And make the analogy to humans. Yeah, if you had to be like we all, even in our younger days, you guys are closer to that than I am, but younger days where we like to go out, what was it? Go out at 7 to 9 o'clock at night, and you're in a little past midnight as even if you're really a social person. Well, that's only 4 or 5 hours, and you're talking about 8-hour day in daycare. It's a long day. There's no question about it. Which is why I think, when I saw the Scouts Honor model, I said, this is what we're gonna model Unleash after, and this is how we're launching our program as well. So, thank you so much for what you guys have done already. You've done a lot of the hard work. I'm just kind of following the lead here, and we're so excited to model ourselves after Scouts Honor. Again, if you want to check Scouts Honor out and just see what they're doing, scoutshonorpetretreat.com, based in Bloomington, Indiana. And again, Allison and Kristen, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for joining us on the Unleash podcast. And I'm sure I'd love to do it again sometime and check in to see how things are going with you.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you so much for having us on. I think this podcast is so cool for pet owners to understand why we do, as business owners, what we do.
Yeah, no question. I think hopefully it turns into that, and it's a chance for a lot of great education, wonderful tidbits, and the few podcasts I've done already, just so many. So much knowledge, so much expertise out there that I can't wait to share with everybody on this Unleash podcast. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.